Good evening and welcome to KQED Newsroom. I'm Thuy Vu. What does the NSA know and how did it get that information? This week, several important developments in a story that's been unfolding all year. On Monday, a federal court questioned the legality of the NSA collecting phone data on Americans. In a meeting at the White House, executives from top tech companies, including Google, Yahoo, Facebook, and Apple, urged President Obama to reform the NSA surveillance programs. An independent committee appointed by the president also recommended an overhaul. Joining me now to guide us through the technological and political landscape are Michelle Quinn, San Jose Mercury News columnist, and Cindy Cohn, legal director at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. And Cindy, let's start with you and the review panel's findings. It's clearly troubled by the NSA's practices. It issued 46 recommendations. What are some of the key findings, and what's been the reaction from the president and from intelligence agencies?
Well, the panel did a pretty comprehensive job at looking at things, and I think the things that are most important is that it recommended that the NSA's telephone records collection program be ended in its current form, just stopped in its current form, and that's a pretty dramatic recommendation. It also gave a very strong endorsement to the use of encryption technologies and strongly reprimanded the NSA for undermining the security of the tools that all of us rely on to keep our messages safe, and that was very welcome. And overall, I think what was striking about the report was that it admitted something that I think, well, I guess the other two things that are striking about the report. The first is that it said that the NSA hadn't really demonstrated that its phone records program had helped keep us safe and that it hadn't actually helped solve any terrorism problems, which is something that the federal judge said as well. But now we've got two very strong voices saying that these programs haven't been proven to really help us. And finally, it said that we can't entrust this much power to any agency, that we can't just say, oh, well, it's okay, the NSA will never abuse their power. And I think it sounded a good warning note about giving that much power to any government agency, which I think is a useful contribution to kind of thinking about this.
And Michelle, this report came just a day after top executives from Silicon Valley came to Washington, met with President Obama, aired their concerns. What was their message to the president?
Well, it's kind of funny. What happened was that the meeting was billed as a healthcare.gov meeting. Like, let's bring all the tech leaders together. Let's talk about healthcare reform and IT procurement. But that wasn't what the meeting was about. It was about NSA. And the tech companies, well, apparently the founder of Zynga asked the president to pardon Edward Snowden, who's the consultant who leaked a lot of the documents and who's the reason why we're all here talking about it. But they really asked for reforms, and they have 5 things they want, including they want to be able to be a check on the system. They want to be able to say when they get asked by the government. So this was an important meeting where some tough things were said to the president about kind of the economic impact of the story.
And what has been the economic impact?
We actually don't know. That's been a great question. What the companies have said is people's trust in us has gone down. They measure trust, and so trust with American consumers, but particularly international consumers. People don't believe that their messages and their information is safe. They might not have always believed it. And that's one thing I wanted to ask Cindy was, do the tech companies have like an interesting dilemma here? They're out there telling the president, you're jeopardizing our business, but to the rest of us they're saying, don't worry, your stuff's safe. We're going to take care of you the best we can.
Well, I think they are in a funny position because they have built business models out of trying to track us and to know, when do I want to buy that bicycle based on watching my behavior. And, the NSA is in certain levels saying, well, we want that information too. But I do think there are some pretty big differences. First of all, the tech companies can't put you in jail. They can't take away your rights, can't take away your passport. It's very different. The government and the tech companies aren't the same. And, the government's collection of your data isn't something that you get a chance to opt out of, right? It's a mandatory, it's been in secret. They're very different. But I do think it's important that the tech companies are standing up and saying, look, there is a difference between us collecting this information and the government getting access to it. And I think they're outraged. It's not the government appears to have been attacking the tech companies and their data systems, and treating these American companies that are this strong part of our economy as if they were targets for surveillance activity.
But is there an irony here? Because on the one hand, the tech companies are almost saying, hey, we're the victims here. But the tech companies are also, some of them are also the same companies that have developed the technology that makes this kind of cyber spying possible. They've made millions off of selling that technology to the government.
Well, I think most of the tech companies that were in the room with President Obama aren't the tech companies who are building surveillance technologies. But it was somewhat telling to see Cisco, the company that had a very big role in building the Great Firewall of China, which is how the Chinese government spies on its citizens, complaining in its quarterly, phone report that it was going to lose money because of the NSA spying revelations. That one was a bit ironic, I think. But lots of Silicon Valley companies have made money off of selling surveillance technologies to the government and making the technology that are used. Most of those aren't the ones who are in the room with the president. The ones that were in the room with the president are the ones that have consumer customers and who are worried. Google and Facebook and Yahoo, the majority of their customers are not Americans.
Right. Marissa Mayer apparently talked to the president, this is from reports, about her concerns about that if countries start to sort of say, we want all of our citizens' data to reside inside of Brazil or Germany, that this is going to do something that people worry about, which is called balkanizing the internet. Actually breaking the data flows. So data, right now, data travels in different ways. She was saying this is a concern, that if the data flows get broken, then this is going to change kind of the internet as we know it. And we were just raising these concerns.
Well, that's an interesting point, because there's the international data collection, and then there's the domestic data collection.
Yes.
How much of all this activity is actually illegal, and how much of it is on shaky legal ground? I know that the Electronic Frontier Foundation has 2 lawsuits on this issue.
That's correct. We have 2 lawsuits that are focused on the domestic collection activities. One that's focused on the phone records activities, called First Unitarian Church versus NSA, and the other one that is an omnibus case, but we are using to focus on the domestic collection under what the government calls their Section 702 program, which is the collection of content and metadata in the United States that the government justifies on the grounds that they're only targeting foreign people, but they're doing the collection here and they're collecting Americans' communications as well. I think that both of those programs are on very shaky legal ground at best. I think that Judge Leon's decision in the D.C. Circuit Court earlier this week was right on about the Fourth Amendment. He
also said this is almost Orwellian.
Yeah, almost
and likely unconstitutional was his message.
That's correct.
And I wanted to bring up a point, is that our Senator, Dianne Feinstein, has been kind of an advocate in Washington for intelligence gathering and law enforcement. And she has a bill, and I would love to know what you think about it, Cindy, but she has a bill that purports to constrain the surveillance, but a lot of critics have say it really doesn't.
Oh, it doesn't at all. It's a complete whitewash. The Feinstein-Rogers bill I mean, a wolf in sheep's clothing is not even, appropriate. It is just a support for the NSA, and it plugs some of the legal holes that EFF and the ACLU and others are using to try to attack the programs. Now, the Leahy-Sensenbrenner bill, and Sensenbrenner is important there. I mean, he was the author of the Patriot Act, who is now saying, wait a minute, I didn't authorize bulk collection. That's not what we were doing with the Patriot Act. And to the extent that the Department of Justice is trying to claim that that's what we did in my bill, that's crazy. That bill is trying to plug some holes in it, and I think it's a very good start. The person in Congress who's done the most on this is Senator Wyden from Oregon, who has just been a champion of these issues.
Well, given all that's happened this week, the Washington federal court ruling, the tech leaders being in Washington meeting with President Obama, the review panel appointed by President Obama criticizing the NSA's practices. Do you think it will actually all make a difference? Can we expect some concrete reforms to come out of this when the president comes back from his Hawaiian vacation in January?
I think so. I mean, I think that people are pushing on all different fronts, and I think this is an important a legacy issue for President Obama. He is a constitutional lawyer and professor before he became a senator. He cares about these issues, and he's got only a few more years left.
Okay.
He inherited these problems.
He promised to have some kind of definitive statement on this in January, so
Right.
we will see. Thank you, Michelle
Thanks.
Quinn and Cindy Cohn.
Thank you.